Simmons, his lovely wife Sherry. Thank you so much for coming out, and we certainly have quite a few friendly society and large brethren. Sisters of Ruth, thank you so much for coming and joining us this evening. The Bermuda Credit Union and their team, certainly. And I can't forget to mention the BEDC team, our team. So we have Erika Smith at the back, our executive director. Raymond Lambert is joining us as well. My colleagues Raymond Lambert, Kalina Otterbridge, Jamila Lodge, Selena Bean, always providing amazing support. And with us in spirit, Denise Mack, our newest BEDC team member. And Denise and Selena have been amazing with all the glue that they provided for this particular co-op and community educational experience this evening. And lastly, Dr. Jessica. We're so excited to have you in Bermuda. You came in yesterday. We'd like to think we've thrown so many fantastic people, amazing opportunities to learn and grow from our Bermudian culture. Welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give her a warm Bermuda welcome. Yeah, just stand back. Thank you so much. My role is simple this evening. Throughout the evening, I'll be continuing to thank all sorts of people, locally and internationally, that have helped us, our Economic and Cooperative Development Unit, get to this place today. Not just, certainly all the amazing educational experiences that many of you attended last November with our Dr. Julian Manley and his Preston Model UK in this very hall, and then back here with the One Worker, One Vote team of cooperative practitioners and developers, December 4th and 5th. But these individuals have helped us to design the forward 3 and 6 months, the rest of 2019, just fantastic learning and development opportunities for you. I'm fortunate enough to work alongside other instructors to teach a martial arts program for young people. And I always tell them, as a golden senior told me many years ago, to walk with an attitude of gratitude. And that's sometimes difficult to do because we're on our iPads and iPhones and just walking through the street and whatnot, but to just lift our heads up and walk slowly through the crowd. And so we're happy for Kaz. Thank you so much. First time working with you. All sorts of video and lighting, and certainly all the wonderful photos that we expect to see from you. The St. Paul's team up at top. Reverend, thank you so much for the venue. Again, happy to be back. Start time, Eugene Dean with all the video and LCD and the screen. Letitia, you've asked, who did the wonderful decorations? That's Letitia and her decorating team. She's not here today, but thank you so much. Abra Feldy, so many service providers, just amazing people that continue to support us. We have just a hard-hitting cooperative and community development agenda, which we're going to kind of follow along the lines of page 2. So it's all laid out there for you. We think that we've created just our number 3 resource guide. The resource guide with Dr. Manley and the One Worker, One Vote team is on our website. So we, thank you, BEDC team, and all of the others that have helped to be able to get the brochures, the evening booklets for those past events online. You can download all PDF. If you didn't have a chance to attend one of those evenings, boom, it puts you right in the space. So we're excited about that. So do take some time and have a read. Don't just have a read, digest. We put a lot of time, it's a lot of soul in this particular booklet that you have in front of you today. Thank you to Nadia Laws. Nadia, stand up at the back. Yeah, there you go. Thank you for coming. Okay, Nadia Laws, ladies and gentlemen. Media maven. We have to recommission Nadia to do two very special interviews with Dr. Jessica, and those are right in the middle of the booklet, if you will. Those are unique and proprietary to Bermuda, and we like to think that they are part of the gift package that Dr. Jessica is leaving Bermuda with. So thank you so much for that, Nadia. And I will be thanking and acknowledging certain individuals and certainly overseas international entities during the course of the evening. So having said that, Dr. Jessica, Erika Smith, our boss, certainly, and myself, we were joined by Leo Mills with the Grand Lodge, as well as Dr. Michael Bradshaw with Samaritan's Lodge, and then Fanon Khaldun, who is the chair president of the African Diaspora Heritage Trail, and last but not least, Maxine Asdale, who's also with the ADHT. And Maxine needs no introduction, a lifelong educator, African Diaspora Heritage Trail advocate, all with just a strong spirit of enabling, equipping, growing, motivating Bermudians youth. So with that, Maxine, my time is up, and you are here to talk about heritage. There she is. You sneaked up on me. Ladies and gentlemen, Maxine Asdale.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first of all thank William, who is one of those young people who grew up with my family. Basically, my nephews, my son, he was with them. They were one of those young people that you saw growing up and doing well in the community. So thank you so much for inviting me, or letting me bug you in order to come to be here. My reason for being is that I'm passionate about education, I'm passionate about Bermuda's young people, and I'm passionate about helping families to ensure that their young people can take advantage of the opportunities that will be there for them. And if we look at what we have in terms of young people now in the 2030s, young people who are in primary 1 today will graduate from senior school in 2033, I think. The 2030s are going to look so much different from what 2019 looks like. So I'm going to talk with you, give you a little bit of information about an opportunity you as families, and when I say families, I mean not just mothers and fathers who are ultimately responsible for their children's future, but grandparents, as I am, aunties, uncles, godparents, the opportunity to ensure that young people in Bermuda who will be facing a challenging future have the financial wherewithal to be able to do that. I'm an agent with Heritage Educational Savings Plan, and if you can see the quote up there from Mandela, you will recognize the importance of education in our future. Can I move from here?
Yeah.
So the opportunity for you as family members to consider how you can help ensure that your young people have the opportunity to take advantage of all that will be there for them in the future. So, starting, we're talking about planning for their future today. And it's this, right? Look, I did the wrong. I'm sorry, I'm technologically challenged for sure. But I think she's going to have to point it that way. No? Which one, really?
Just say next.
Just say next. That makes it so much better, thank you. Next. Okay, now, this slide starts by saying that, no, can we go back to that slide? Okay. This is the reality. In 2030 and beyond, someone, Gary Hadler and others, say that millions of jobs will be lost. The kinds of jobs that robot automation will take over means that the kinds of jobs that will be in your children, grandchildren's, nieces, nephews' future is going to be quite different from the jobs which there are today, even in Bermuda. So if this is true, next, what jobs will those children have? Can anybody think of a job that your child will have, or grandchild or godchild will have that's not here today? A job that's not available right now? I can tell you one that's going to impact their future. Driverless cars will mean we don't need taxi drivers. That's a job that has been a Bermudian staple. But as the world evolves, and the opportunity for those kinds of things that these creative minds are thinking of, some of the jobs that you think your children will have or grandchildren will have will not be there. We're challenged with this. So, next, just click for me. We don't know what those jobs are going to be. That's the unknown. The best way to be prepared for the unknown is to start preparing now. Next. So what do we know? We don't know what jobs there will be. What do we know? Next. We know that 70% of the jobs that will be available from now until 2030 and beyond will require something beyond high school. That's a reality. 70% of the jobs that will be in your children's future, your grandchildren's future, your nieces, nephews, godchildren's future will require beyond secondary school, and in many cases, maybe not a 4-year degree, but definitely something beyond secondary school. Next. What else do we know? We know that college post-secondary education is expensive. At the moment, it is estimated, and the slide doesn't really you can't see it well, but I can tell you that it's estimated that it's going to double in the next 5 to 10 years. Right now, it could cost up to $20,000, $30,000 a year. Those kinds, and that's for college, but when you look at other kinds of jobs which require technical training, they are expensive also. So the opportunity for you when that young person is ready to go to that next phase of their education, beyond high school, is what you have to be thinking of now. Next. Here's what we also know. We know, I know, as an educator, I've been an educator all my life. I started teaching when I was 18, which was like 10 years ago. Just like 10. But I know that education is one of the most important things that we can ensure that our young people have. So the opportunity to save for post-secondary or tertiary education is one of the major roles that we as adults in this community should be about doing, and Heritage Educational Savings Plans helps you to do that. That's a company in Bermuda. It's from a Canadian company, but all of the people who work in our office are Bermudians. We are about trying to ensure, to help the Bermudian community ensure that they will be able to have their children attend a post-secondary education institution of their choice. So we do have, we're at the back there. When you have a moment, you can pop by and see us. Next. And I'm almost finished. So here are some facts about Heritage. We've been in the business for 30 years. Before I was just like 5 when they started. Last year, we paid out $3.4 million to Bermudian families. Next. The plan allows you to invest what you can afford. The plan matures when the child turns 18. Next. and it offers a great return on your investment. If you just save at the bank, I'm going to tell you get 1.2%, 1.3%. Our return on your investment is much better than that. Next. So, I'm going to suggest that you be like Jeremy Lamb. I'm a basketball kind of person, and last week Sunday, Jeremy Lamb did the most amazing thing. Next. Jeremy Lamb made a decision he was 3/4 of the way down the court. 3/4 of the way down the court. He made a decision. He was going to go for it. Next. He set up a plan, figured in his head how I'm going to do this, set up that plan, and then he met his goal and made that shot. I'm going to suggest that we as a community need to recognize that we need to make the decision that we're going to ensure that all of our young people have the best opportunities possible for post-secondary education. Then we're going to set up a plan, and I suggest the plan should be with Heritage Educational Savings Plans. And then we together will help you meet that goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adele. Okay, Selena's up top, kind of switching us over. Okay, so see Maxine, she's got a booth at the back, and you can easily get in touch with her. I think her cell number goes up there. And many of us in the room, maybe finished our schooling, kind of come to the end of that sort of serious learning, but we have children, and our children have children. So do pass on the information, tons of pamphlets at the back. Okay, so we've got Dr. Bradshaw, Dr. Michael Bradshaw up. Please. Dr. Bradshaw, thank you so much for all your work. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to do that. You have to salute. Last year, we commissioned Michael to be able to pull together Friendly Society large members, executive, to be able to have some dialogue and conversations about how BEDC can support, help facilitate introductions, different dialogue with other corporate donor entities to be able to renovate buildings, to be able to talk about how can our lodges be attractive benefits for new members. Dr. Bradshaw, thank you for your leadership. We've had some amazing meetings with various Friendly Society and lodge members. Last night, certainly with Leo Mills, and our conversations became, set up meetings with the Grand Lodge and their executive, Brother Stenny. Thank you so much for coming as well. And thank you as well for your whole piece that you wrote within the book. So ladies and gentlemen, page 8, Samaritans. It's all about Dr. Bradshaw's lodge, along with his brethren up at Cobbs Hill, Warwick. Okay, so just want to be able to give you a special thank you, and looking forward to your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Bradshaw.
Good evening, all. Thank you very much for being here. And I'm going to follow along with my dear friend Maxine. And she talked about being an educator. I also am an educator. I also am very proud to say I'm a Friendly Society member, and to look around and see so many Friendly Societies represented here. And another important thing is that if you're in Bermuda, if you've enjoyed anything in Bermuda's social development, you have benefited from the Friendly Society connections. And that's one of the distinctions from being a Freemason. I'm not taking a poke at Freemasons. But whereas the Freemasons will work with, and we're just getting the technology together, whereas the Freemasons will work to better the individual, we talk about the community. So we're quickly running through what we talk about, the Atlantic connections, which reinforce that cooperative philosophy has been here in Bermuda. It's something that I'm going to call a Sister Jessica, we met last night, will reinforce and talk about more. But it's something that we have been doing, and that's important. And this shows how people talk of the triangular voyage. And people think of that as a movement of materials and including those materials for slaves, how we got here. And how this moved from Europe down to Africa, back up to North America. Bermuda sits at the center of that. And this, the cover picture of Friendly Societies, is important for you to note. There are men, there are women, there are black, and there are white. So that although the Friendly Societies were called the Black Lodges, the Friendly Societies are based on not excluding anyone because of gender or race or ethnicity or religious affiliation, which were all prejudices which were very common in the 18th century and earlier. So now we're talking about how Bermuda has benefited and has gone on from these Friendly Society people, these brethren. The next slide, as I said, quickly talks about the transatlantic voyage, that Bermuda Triangle. And note that we sit near the center of that triangle. So this small, isolated dot, one of the most isolated places in the world, is important. And we're not disrespecting our colleagues from the great metropolises of the USA or Africa or, Europe, but we are important. God made us, and we've made ourselves. And the Friendly Societies have been important in what has made us. So that's why it's important for you to get part of this story. And as we move on to the next slide, and it looks like we've got a little time delay. The next slide, this is something that should be familiar to Bermudans. And I'm going to pick two things out of this. This really is up there at the National Museum of Bermuda. I repeat, National Museum of Bermuda, up at Dockyard. So we should all know this. We should all be taking our children to see this. It was done by, I think it's Graham Foster, the guy's name. Tremendous piece of work. But here's the fascinating thing. In that panorama, in that cavalcade of Bermuda's history, you do not see the Friendly Societies represented. A big omission. And it's a big omission for which we, the Friendly Societies, apologize. Our story has been so good, so important, and we've kept it private. We had, for reasons of, let's face it, prejudice, bias that existed in Bermuda, to keep some things quiet. That's no longer necessary, and it is dangerous. We need to tell our children. So we need to know more about the Friendly Society story. So I'm very glad that you're here. And the Friendly Society story begins before emancipation, but the big story about Bermudians, as black Bermudians, as a society that's open for unification, is about post-emancipation. So that people were free, but not equal. You weren't equal if you were a woman. You weren't equal if you came from working class or poor, and most people were poor. And you definitely were not equal if you were black. But the Friendly Societies, with their cooperative philosophy, working together, many hands, strength in unity, whether you're talking about gift clubs, whether you're talking about the early one-room schools, whether you're talking about just about anything in Bermuda, came from the Friendly Society. So it was about establishing an alternative option to the whole idea of patronage, to the whole idea of success of white males. A few symbols, common things you may recognize. At the top left, that's at the Loyal Flower of the Day Lodge. It's the lodge opposite People's Pharmacy. Two lodges in there, Loyal Flower of the Day Lodge, and also the Mayflower Lodge. And that banner that is up there, and you'll have an opportunity to see more of these at another time. I'm sure they can send them to you. And that up there is the banner of the Friendly Societies Association. Having started back in the 1820s, we still, having had at one point maybe 70 or 80 lodges, we still have 5 functioning lodges. That's important history. That's an important something that you have done, you have created, because you've had this. The linked rings there, FLT, friendship, love, and truth. Watchwords. Each of the lodge orders have different watchwords, but they all speak to this upliftment of the human spirit. Not just of the black spirit, but of the human spirit of all peoples. And I'm not sure what's happened with that. But anyhow, there are a couple of symbols that are up there. And this emphasis is on self-help and mutual help. It shouldn't say versus mutual help. The friendly societies, cooperatism is about self-help, becoming involved, taking the step, as Maxine says, boldly stepping up, and mutual help, doing it together. So this is very fitting that we can come on and add as the little preamble for Sister Jessica. Coming up to the next one. Well, you can always talk about self-help again. But this is to reinforce this idea of history and idea of ownership. If you don't recognize those buildings, you need to get your Bermuda passport checked. I'm quite serious about that. Because these are your buildings. Not just your buildings because you're Bermuda, but your buildings because you're part of the Bermuda community. And these buildings, and the first one is the Loyal Irresistible Lodge in Somerset. Hopefully, I know there's a Somerset pastor here. I'm not going to ask them to stand because we just wouldn't get through the time. The middle one is the Bermudian Heritage Museum. Somewhere else you must go. A Samaritan's Lodge. Bermudian history, Joy Wilson Tucker, Boyd Smith, others, an important lodge, an important museum for you. And the final one was, we won't get to it. Quickly going on, these are just some quick symbols, things that I hope you will have a look at and see if you can find in them. Badges, symbols of lodges. The one on the left is the shepherds. People from Somerset, people from St. George would remember Christmas time, the shepherds. Ancient order foresters. Strictly a white lodge, but included in the friendly societies as a black lodge, because we don't follow color. And the only reason it was a white lodge was because they were English soldiers. So it's not a lodge based on race, it's a lodge which happened to have people. And to show the international connection, that final one was of a lodge in Bahamas. And the reason I put that up is because that's a lodge of the Alps, closely allied, like the shepherds, to the Good Samaritans. And this was a quick note of a celebration. I mentioned the Loyal Mayflower Lodge, and they have their 100th celebration this year, and I have seen a few Mayflower sisters here. And somebody quickly, when is your 100th celebration? What day? May the 12th. 100 years. And that's the baby of the lodges. So we have a history. 100 years. And they will, I'm sure, give you an invitation. And that's my lodge on Cobbs Hill. Princess Royal Union Lodge, Independent Order of Good Samaritans, number 135. Thank you very much. And it's not that I actually finished. I said that any one of our lodge members can give you a recitation of the history and presence and prominence of their lodge. So please ask a lodge member where they come from and what their history is. And even if you don't know a lodge member, ask some of your family members, because you'll be surprised to find out how many of them were lodge people or associated with lodge people, because it's about cooperation. And one of our watchwords, strength in unity. Strength in unity. It's not about competition. It's about being different, but working together. What a watch.
But no sense kind of having those private meetings. We're going to bring them right back before you and in a public setting to have some thoughts on a very wider scale. That's going to be on April the 11th, but April 10th, we're going to do a deep dive into the sports club models. The sports clubs are at their hearts cooperatives. Very large member base, for the most part, democratically controlled AGMs. Many clubs, as you know, function with the executive, and then the AGMs, the major bodies disappear for the rest of the year. But we think that the sports club models, football clubs, cricket clubs, bricks and mortar clubs, have a fantastic opportunity to be able to embrace the co-op model, to design new value propositions with their members, with their disciple-like individuals that are very loyal to the club, football programs that were brought up in the club, they patronize the club. And we want to be able to bring the world via webinar and in presence to be able to help cast a vision and be able to lead on these particular ideas. And the rest of our seminars are there as well. Okay, so without any further ado, we have Maxine Asdale introduce our keynote presenter.
Good evening again, everybody. You all are in for a wonderful time. Dr. Nembhard, and William told me that I need to pronounce it correctly, I probably didn't. But I met Dr. Nembhard last night, we had dinner, and this is a young person who has a tremendous wealth of information about the cooperative experience. I have been instructed to read this first part for you just to give you some grounding in who she is and what she does. So Jessica Gordon-Nembhard is a co-op educator, an advocate and researcher. She's the author of the book called Collective Courage, A History of African American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice. That's one of those PhD titles. It has to be long and it has to have a colon in the middle. And the book is at the back there, which you can purchase. Dr. Nembhard is a political economist specializing in community economics, Black political economy, and popular economic literacy. Her research and numerous publications explore problematics and alternative solutions in cooperative economic development, worker ownership, community economic development, race, racial wealth inequality, credit unions, and community-based asset building and community-based approaches to justice. You can see that this young lady has a wealth of information, has a wealth of experience. And some of the stories that she shared last night, if she tells you about any of them, you're really going to be impressed with what has been able to happen when one works in a cooperative atmosphere. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Dr. Jessica to come forward and share her wealth of knowledge with us. You will be impressed.
Good evening, everybody.
Hold on, I'm supposed to try to use this other.
Is that working? Oh, okay, good. You can hear me all right? Okay, great. So thank you all for coming. I don't know, maybe you can't hear me so well. Is this better? Okay. Is this better? Yes, right? Okay. We'll work with this one. And they're working on the PowerPoint.
So I first just
wanted to thank William Spriggs for having me, for all the staff at BEDC, for all the hard work they've done, and thank all the hosts and all of you for coming. I really appreciate it. It's my first time here in Bermuda, and it's a fast trip, but it's actually been a really full trip. I've met a lot of fabulous people, as you hear people keep coming up and telling you they already had a meal with me, so I've been really lucky. And I even met the premier. So I'm feeling like quite a celebrity. So thank you all for making me feel that way and for having me. I also always like to start by acknowledging the ancestors. especially those struggles of enslaved laborers, as well as those who continue to labor without just compensation. And I stand on the shoulders of people who have used cooperatives as a form of liberation. So hopefully most of you already know what a cooperative is, but I'll do something quickly, and you might just get the PowerPoint another day, so don't worry about it. Cooperatives are companies or enterprises that are jointly owned by people in communities who create them for a need, to satisfy a need, to address a problem, to create better access, more affordable goods and services, etc. They're organized and governed in a specific way, which is what we call one person, one vote, about democratic participation. They're based on their values-based businesses. So the first value is, again, addressing a need and providing a service, equal profit sharing and equal decision-making power. And then also, to be a viable business, you still have to have a bottom line. You have to have some profit or some what we call surplus, so that you can continue to run the business the next year. It's all about shared risk and shared profit sharing. And cooperatives operate under 7 to 10 principles of cooperation, which actually the 10 Mondragon principles are in the back of your pamphlet, so I won't talk about that. One of the first things I had to learn about cooperatives when I decided to look at them as an urban development strategy was the ways that cooperatives are actually used by every group of people. When I first learned about them, it looked like they were only a sort of a device that Europeans used, and that then Europeans started teaching other people how to use. But the more I studied them, I actually found out that every people in the world have used them during every era of human civilization. It's not something they used to teach that cooperatives started in 1844 with the Rochdale pioneers in England, but that's also not true. I mean, the official legal entity that we have now started in 1844, but economic cooperation, mutual aid, those kinds of, using the commons, those kinds of things that every population in every era. So that has helped me a lot, because when I started talking to African Americans about cooperatives, they told me that African Americans don't do that. Until I started reminding them of what they do, and then they're like, oh, that's what you mean by cooperatives, so that's what you mean by cooperation. And then people started remembering the lodges, the mutual aid societies, the co-op stores that their grandparents were involved in, the project their aunt and uncle did. And so I try to start my conversations now by talking about how cooperatives are universal as opposed to specific. So I want to talk to you about the history of African American cooperatives that I found. And I'm going to tell you that history first by giving you a quick overview, and then with examples and what I call 10 ways that cooperatives benefit their communities. So the first thing is that I wrote the book, Collective Courage, and I'm sorry about the long title. But that's why I put the short beginning title, Collective Courage. But I needed to say the other part of the title because it really is a history, it really is about cooperative economic thought, and it is about cooperative economic practice, and I didn't really know how to explain that without putting it all in the title. So I am an unapologetic academic, but I'm also a scholar activist. So I talk about in the book hundreds of mutual aid societies, Black communal towns, examples of formal and informal economic cooperation, pretty much from the 1780s into the present, or at least the late 2000s. I found about 162 legally incorporated cooperatives, and some rural, some urban, starting in the mid-1800s. I also used the work of W.E.B. Du Bois, who some of you might know, an important scholar, an African-American scholar, and then the last days of his life he lived in Ghana. But he actually wrote a book before me in 1907 called Economic Cooperation Among Negro Americans, and I was able to use a lot of his early work and research to help me start the research I was doing, and so I also Pepper the book with some of his findings and his information. And basically what we both found, and what I found continued even after 1907, when Du Bois was talking about it, is the ways that co-ops have helped African Americans to save costs, increase income and wealth, combat racial discrimination by taking charge of their own economic activity, especially when they were either oppressed and exploited or left out of the economy. They used cooperatives to actually help them gain economic stability and self-sufficiency, save and create decent jobs, provide independence and self-determination, and also develop leadership, which turns out to be a huge piece. So it wasn't really just the economic benefits that we found. The barriers, I'm going to get those out of the way first, because some people accuse me of being too Pollyanna about this and not talking about the barriers. So now I mention them first and then get them out of the way. And then you can see how the examples I give you, the barriers got overcome. Capitalization and access to capital can be a problem. Adequate and proper orientation and training in cooperative economics as well as in the business development. Distrust and excessive competition. Ideology, political ideology and policies or lack of supportive policies. Racism, patriarchy, and classism also have gotten in the way. And in the United States, African American cooperatives were often targeted by white supremacist terrorism. Whites who didn't want the co-ops to succeed, and so terrorism was extended from financial sabotage to actual lynchings of people who were trying to do cooperatives. But despite all those barriers, I found, as I already started to mention, this rich history of African Americans engaging in collective economics, cooperative ownership, in ways that I didn't even realize until I started doing the research. And they found ways to have alternative ownership structures and just kind of sometimes to pull themselves out of the regular system to do what they needed to do, or to create parallel systems through credit unions and other kinds of cooperatives in order to really make sure that they could feed their families, that they could amass a little bit of wealth, they could have some stability that also helped the community, didn't just help an individual, and really help further the ability of African Americans to then fight for civil and political rights. Because one of the things that was happening is that the ability to get involved civically was impaired because of the economic exploitation. So for example, during the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, sharecroppers, I don't know if you know who sharecroppers are, but those are farmers who don't own the land, they rent it. And in many cases, they were renting it from people whose families had been slave owners, 100 years before. But it's perpetual debt, right? You have to borrow in order to buy your seed and plant your farm and feed your family before the harvest comes. When the harvest comes, the owner of the land takes the rent out of your harvest. They also tell you how much the harvest is worth, so they only give you a certain amount of money for the harvest, and they charge you for all the supplies and stuff, and then you're in debt, and you have to start this year again in new debt. And anyway, co-ops helped a lot of those. When they then went to register to vote or get involved in politics, they would be thrown off the land because they're only renters. And so then they couldn't even fight for their own civil rights. And so owning a co-op gave them an opt-out of that economic system that allowed them to be thrown off the land, and then they had more independence to then do the political work they needed to do. And you'll see I have some examples of that. So that's what I mean by being a tool, both for cooperative economic development as well as for civil rights. So 10 ways that co-ops benefit their communities. The first way is that co-ops anchor and recirculate resources. How do they do that? Because cooperatives are very local, they're owned by people who need them and use them, they're owned by community members, and they usually tend to stay in the community. So they keep the benefits and the returns to capital and production within the membership, and they spend the money and purchase the products and things that they need from the money they make in the community. So rather than other businesses that tend to take the money out of the community, co-ops keep it recirculating. Local wages are used to buy other things. Many co-ops actually buy locally, and then the surplus is returned to members who are local and then use it again. And so the recirculation continues and continues. One example is Consumers Cooperative Trading Company in Gary, Indiana. During the Great Depression, they were able to start a food cooperative, and then a credit union, and then another second food cooperative branch and a gas station. And they basically used, right, the gas station was for the members because they needed gas as well as food, and the credit union enabled them to put some savings into the credit union, which then could help lend money to the grocery store and the gas station, that kind of thing, so circulating it. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, a relatively famous Black independent union, used cooperatives because they wanted to make sure that their hard-won wages through unionization were then used to support the Black community. So they wanted the members of the union to then spend their money at a credit union, at a grocery store that was all owned by members, and they're again recirculating the money. So it wasn't good enough to have a good union job if it wasn't helping the rest of the community. And so again, you'll see in a minute when I talk about education and training, they believed in training people about cooperatives so then they could start cooperatives and their union would be supportive of this whole circular relationship. 2, education and training, extremely, extremely important. In fact, one of the things I realized after I put the book together and was trying to think about what were the lessons to talk about in the introduction was that pretty much all the 162 co-ops that I learned something about and wrote about in the book, almost all of them started with a study circle, a study group. Why? Because it seems like that's a good way, one, to come together with a group of people to figure out what is the need, right? What are you trying to solve or do, right? 2, you start learning about the co-op model together because remember, in your society as well as in the US, the co-op model is not predominant. Most people don't know how it works, and it's different from the mainstream model. So learning it together builds that sense of solidarity, cohesion, and trust that you actually need to run a co-op with other people. And then the education and training, you need to actually be a co-op member, right? You need to learn about the business that the co-op is in, but you also need to learn how to work with other people, how to make decisions together, how to be an active member, which means you have to participate in as much of the decision-making as possible. You have to even be able to read a financial spreadsheet, a profit and loss sheet, because you have to make decisions about the finances. And so you have to learn all the time. And learning together is another way to form cohesion. The other thing that most of the early co-ops had was they all were started by people who were already in something together, in a fraternal organization, in the same church, right? Because again, they already knew each other, they had some affiliation, and so the inspiration or the encouragement to work together and the ability to then trust and work together to go further and share money and business, it was good to have those relationships already existing, but also studying together created those. So education was a key, and I still argue, that's why I call myself a co-op educator, because I still argue how important education is to the co-op movement and to making sure the co-ops start on solid ground. And it's really continuous education because you can't keep being an active member of your co-op if you don't stay current with what's happening with your co-op and keep sharing ideas and learning more together with people. And then you can't bring in new people if you don't continuously educate the new people so they know as much, if not more, than the original people. And so it's a cycle both for each individual who's in it, but also for the co-op itself to keep that education going. Again, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, because they believed in this model of recirculating resources and wealth throughout the community, they actually had a co-op education program that was run by the Ladies Auxiliary to the Brotherhood. And the Ladies Auxiliary had pamphlets. They encouraged people to subscribe to co-op magazines They had studies, they created study sessions. They wrote in their own magazine, The Black Worker, they wrote articles about cooperatives, gave examples from all over the world about cooperatives that worked, and helped their members to create cooperatives. Often black groups did study tours. The group in Memphis went to Gary, Indiana to study the co-op there, or they went to the group in Richmond, went to Harlem to study the co-op there, so they exchanged ideas and moved around the country talking to each other about what they were doing and what the barriers were, how they addressed barriers, etc. That's another form of studying and working together. The study tours, they even had some international connections with Japan and Canada, again, to find out what was going on in other places, what they could learn and what they needed to learn, and understanding those strategies. A final piece of education that was really important that reminds me of what's already happening here with the BEDC, North Carolina, in the 1930s, two black independent schools got together and decided they needed to create a statewide system of co-op education because they realized how important cooperative development was to the black community. And what they were able to do was partner with the state Agriculture Association and create brochures for how to start a credit union, how to start a cooperative, and they went around the state and gave workshops. Again, this is the 1930s, sort of toward the end of the Great Depression, early 1940s. They were able to increase the number of credit unions. In 1936, there were 3 black credit unions in the state of North Carolina. By 1948, in 12 years, there were 98 credit unions because of this program, and 48 additional co-op enterprises, 9 consumer stores, 32 machine co-ops, 4 curb markets, 2 health associations, and 1 housing project. So again, that shows you the power of education. They had these programs, people came to them, and they were able to actually start co-ops around them, even when the economic conditions were not very good. Cooperatives also create meaningful work, number 3. They create jobs, but also good jobs, because it's also one of the tenets, right, that work and jobs should be meaningful and should connect to the needs and should, again, be supportive of the whole organization and then the community. And so often, a lot of co-ops, not all of them, but a lot of them actually try to do living wages, or at least good wages, again, support for education and training, job ladder opportunities, often self-management, so that teaching workers and consumer owners how to manage their own business, because again, that's the purpose of a co-op, to have that control. So it makes for good jobs. We have several examples of worker co-ops. Those are co-ops owned by their employees that have created good jobs in industries that don't have good jobs, like Cooperative Home Care Associates in the Bronx in New York. Home care, very low skill, not very well paid work, right? It's below nursing and a nurse's aide. This agency created a worker co-op to both increase the quality of home care services as well as the quality of home care jobs. And they believe that matching those two things, right? You want high quality care of the people that you're taking care of, and then high quality job for the caregiver. And so that's how they marketed themselves. They created their own training program. They are the largest worker co-op in the United States. They have over 2,000 people, about 1,700 of them are member owners, mostly women, mostly Latina and African American. And again, they prided themselves in making sure that the worker owners got the training they needed, worked together to give high quality services, were able to then demand competitive wages, so that they raised the wage level in the industry. The co-op also joined with other home care associations that weren't cooperatives to petition the state to make sure to increase the Medicaid allocation to home care so that everybody could raise the wages, so then the co-op's wages would be more competitive, So a lot of different pieces that fit in this. And then they also were really, because they believed in quality jobs, they focused on also job ladder support. They didn't want any member to just get stuck in the lowest levels of home care. They helped them to become trained nurses' aides, trained RNs, they could move up, and they also helped them to move up into management positions in the co-op. So again, the meaningful work, returns to employment are very important. Addressing market failure, that's number, what am I up to? 4, thank you. Addressing market failure and marginalization. Again, I think I mentioned that from the very beginning. African Americans often use cooperatives when they were left out, right? Marginalized or discriminated against, not allowed to buy in a certain store, that kind of thing. They would create their own store. One of my favorite examples of that is actually a mercantile, a grocery store, I guess you would call it, a grocery co-op that was created by the Oddfellows, which I think you all know a little bit about the Oddfellows, right? The Oddfellows Lodge. So in 1901 in Virginia, the Oddfellows Lodge realized that African Americans were not getting the kinds of supplies they needed to farm, nor food supplies and stuff, because the white mercantile store only let them shop certain days of the week, wouldn't sell them certain things, sold them all the worst products, etc. So they created their own cooperative store. They actually competed. I think they made their store across the street or down the street from the white store, which everyone thought was going to be suicide, but because they were able to have lower prices because of the buying power, the combined buying power they have as a cooperative. They were able to hire blacks and so make black people feel more comfortable in their store. They actually were able to keep that store open for 20 years. And one of the things that a researcher found when I was looking up about this co-op was that even after the 20 years, so by the mid-40s and 50s, in that county where that co-op had been, the standard of living for African Americans had doubled and was higher than the white standard of living in that area. When the white community in the early 1950s tried to stop the integration of schools and close down the school system, the black community was already so united and connected that they were able to fight against that. And the researcher I found was saying that whole 20-year history of cooperation helped them to be strong and to battle against the other things that were happening to them. So again, this connection between the economic prosperity and independence that you get from a cooperative, and then it's enabling you to go on and do other things, especially economic independence. A lot of co-ops have been used by black women. One of the findings I also had was the power of black women through the co-op movement, partly through the mutual aid societies, but also once the co-op movement got more firmly started, African American women were often the leaders, often the educators in the movement, and also used the co-ops to start their own women-owned businesses, that kind of thing. There was one in Washington, D.C. in the 30s that did mattress and barrel making, and then they actually branched out and bought a farm and did farm-to-table activities to bring fresh produce into Washington, D.C. during the Great Depression, at the same time that they were doing the mattresses. So that's another important. And then another way we can think about working with marginalized communities is to talk about prison cooperatives, cooperatives owned by incarcerated people. I've just started studying that more recently and found some really incredible examples, not in the United States, unfortunately, except Puerto Rico, which I guess you could count in the United States. But I'm trying to bring it to the United States because it's still a great example of how cooperatives have helped people who are marginalized to become less marginalized or to address the issues they need to address. And the prison co-ops, some of them, like in Italy and Sweden, are actually what they call social co-ops. They're more a combination of sort of nonprofits and social work type people who create co-ops that then will also hire inmates or hire returning citizens of their earnings, their revenues. They then pay for the rent, the room that they use, the computers that they use, the electricity that they use. They also, a few of them are allowed to go out of the prison to sell their wares, but they have to take guards, so they pay for all that, all the transportation, they pay for the guards' time. And then they also put money back into the company, and then about 50% of the money goes into earnings for the men. Of course, they can't handle the money while they're in prison, so again, they're put into separate individual accounts that's held in the corrections facility. And then they require that if you're a member of the co-op and you have children, some of your earnings has to go to child support, because they also want to make sure that they're connected in that way. So again, an example of how empowering a co-op can be even for the most marginalized of people. 5, am I up to 5? I think so. Joint ownership. The importance of owning things together also make a huge difference to a community, because that's, again, it sort of becomes like a community resource in a way that the whole community can benefit from a business ownership. You're pooling scarce resources, you're leveraging those resources to do something else, you're reducing individual risk, you're profit sharing. The collective ownership and democratization of capital allows for more people, right, to sort of get a piece of the pie, if you want to talk about a pie like that. And again, that joint ownership of people in the same community keeps the money recirculating. Building wealth. 7? 6? Sorry, somehow I've got my pages all out of order. So 6. Building wealth. So I gave you a little bit of an idea about how co-ops want to help with increasing income, but they also help build wealth. Why? Because cooperatives are businesses, and part of a wealth portfolio is actually business equity. And a successful cooperative business actually has equity. It's shared by a wider number of people than a normal corporation. And that equity belongs to the people who are members, and they can either leverage that equity. Some co-ops actually give it back in dividends every year, like Cooperative Home Care Associates. Remember we talked about them already? They actually give 25% of your initial equity payment back every year that they've been profitable, and they've been profitable in 90% of the years that they've operated. It costs $1,000 to become a member of Cooperative Home Care Associates, which sounds a little bit high, but that you can pay for it in installments once you start working, right? But almost every year, they pay 25% back on that, so you get $250 back. In 4 years, you've actually gotten back your equity, but you still have your equity in it, and the next 5th year, you're still getting your $250 in dividends. So that's wealth, right? Wealth is money that reproduces itself without you having to do very much for it. I mean, they obviously have to work to keep the business going, but they're also getting salaries. Remember, we already said they already get decent salaries given the industry they're in. So this is on top of that. So that's what we mean by wealth building. And different kinds of cooperatives, not all cooperatives are that successful, but different kinds of cooperatives give back a dividend. You earn money on your initial investment in the co-op. And so the co-op, again, is a stable community business, also provides wealth opportunities and wealth ownership. 8. 7. You guys are doing better than me. Democratic participation, did I say that one already? Being a decision maker in an organization that is making a profit or making a surplus, right? And being an equal partner in that organization is very important, because it helps us to develop skills of how to speak out for yourself, how to be a leader, how to make decisions with other people, right? Things that we should know how to do, but we don't really know how to do because we don't often have a chance to practice it. if we're not in a co-op, right, we spend most of our waking hours at a job, right? And most of our jobs are hierarchical, and most of us are not in the upper decision-making echelons of our job, right? So in the regular workplace, even in a school setting, right, most of the time other people are telling us what to do, telling us what to think, what to know, and we're happy enough with that. But in a co-op, if that's your job, if that's the work that you're doing, you're spending most of your working hours in the co-op, well, in the co-op, you're working together, you're making decisions together, you're talking to other people, you're sharing ideas. It's going to change how you see life, right? You're going to develop leadership skills in a different way, you develop skills about conflict resolution, etc. And so what we're also finding is people who participate in cooperatives turn out to develop capacities that they didn't realize they have, and then end up using them in other places. We have women who are in worker cooperatives who now start to be more involved in their school, in their children's schools, and the PTA are taking leadership in their children's schools. We find men getting more involved in politics and running for office and other things. We find co-op people starting other co-ops, starting credit unions, being involved in other ways, and so that leadership development that comes out of democratic participation is important. So that leadership development is my 8th one. Are we on 8? Can't believe I lost count. And so I just kind of explained leadership through the democratic participation. The democratic management requires people to find a way to be a leader. One of the things I learned from a worker co-op trainer is how important it is that everybody in the co-op see themselves as a leader and see leadership in a new way. So see leadership as stepping up and stepping back, right? So stepping up for a particular job purpose or time period when there's a void or when the skills that you have can really be helpful, but knowing how to step back and let other people take leadership in other cases. Some of the co-ops actually rotate leadership roles, like managers and that kind of thing, so everybody gets a chance. Some people keep committees as the leadership role instead of one person. And then some use a more traditional management style where 1 or 2 people are the top managers or whatever. But in any of those cases, again, people learn how to show leadership, how to take leadership, and how to transform it in a way that can be very important both for the co-op, but for the community and for what gives back to the community. As I said, we see that with women's leadership, youth development and youth leadership is also one of the byproducts. I'm going to talk to you about 2 youth co-ops that I'm really excited about. One is called Food from the Hood. Started in the 1990s in South Central Los Angeles after the 1992 rebellions against the police brutality. In Crenshaw High School, someone started a school garden as a summer program with some of the kids in the neighborhood who were going to that high school. And the school garden took off, and in fact was very successful. They had so much food, they wanted to give it to, they shared it with their families, but they also wanted to give it to the homeless because they understood, the homeless was all around them. They understood that food would be helpful. So they started giving it away. Then the next year they took an entrepreneurship program and they realized they didn't have to give all the food away. They could also do other things like sell at a farmer's market and make some money so that they would have money to do some things with. Then they realized they started learning about value added, and they realized that if they made some other products out of some of the things they were growing, they could actually also create a business out of it. They decided to do salad dressing with the herbs that they were growing in the garden. So they created a salad dressing company, ran it as a school co-op, a youth co-op. They started teaching younger students about how to do this because as high school students, you're only in high school for 4 years and they had this notion of longevity. So they started teaching the middle school kids so when they came up into the high school, they'd be ready to take over the co-op as the other ones are graduating. They still were selling produce at the farmer's market, but they spent a lot of time with this marketing and selling their salad dressing. In the 1990s was the start of Amazon as an internet platform. They actually sold their produce through Amazon so they could sell it anywhere in the United States. They didn't have to just sell it at school fairs and in the backyards and that kind of thing. So they were using the new technology. They were so successful, they decided they were making profits. They voted to save 50% of their profits to put into a college scholarship fund for their members. So then each year when the seniors who were in the co-op graduated from high school, they now actually had enough money to go to college. That part was so successful. In 10 years, they awarded over $180,000 in college scholarships. And the school, realizing now that they had students who could afford to go to college, put in a college prep program. So that, again, you can see not only did their lives get transformed, they brought the younger people in so they could take over after them, and they transformed what was happening in the school because now the school saw what the co-op was doing for their students and added programs. So again, you can see sort of this ecosystem that starts under these. Another similar example, a little bit different, Toxic Soil Busters. Started in the 2000s. This was a youth entrepreneurship program out of a not-for-profit in a summer program. And what happened there was the young people came together to talk about environmental racism and environmental justice issues. And the issue that the students focused on was lead poisoning. There was lead in the soil in their backyards, and they noticed that their younger siblings were getting lead poisoning from playing in the backyard. So they did a study about it, they found out what was going on, they found out how to test lead, and they found out how to do lead abatement. And so they created this cooperative, a youth-owned cooperative, they called it Toxic Soil Busters, very creative, and they started doing an education program. That's the first thing they did because they had to get clients, but how do you get clients if people don't even know what the problem is or how to fix a problem? So they started doing an education program in their community with skits and videos to explain the toxic soil issue. And in this case, it wasn't the lead paint, but it was actually in the soil in the backyards. And so they explained all that, and then would go in and do free testing of the soil, and then they would sign on a client once the client found out that their soil was high in lead. They would do lead abatement, planting certain kinds of plants that absorb the lead, and also doing raised bed gardens and things like that. That group branched out into video production since they'd already been doing that as part of their marketing for their business. They also were learning leadership development. One of the, two of the people came to one of the conferences we had, and they wanted to join the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. In fact, they wanted to run for the board, but the U.S. Federation has a rule that you have to be over 18 because that's sort of a non-profit rule for running the board. So several of them got upset with us because they were like, we run our own company, but you're telling us we're not old enough to be on the board of the National Federation of Worker Cooperatives. So they were trying to get us to change the rules even though we couldn't. They had to wait till they were 18. But they were complaining about that even at school too. They were treated like kids, but here they were, outside of school running their own company, and so they didn't feel like their leadership was being, and their capacities were being recognized as well as they wanted to. But again, those students, young people actually, it's not through the school, but were able to go on to college, they were taking on leadership roles, etc. They were transforming their neighborhoods, they were bringing on their younger siblings, etc. to keep this project going. 9, civic participation. Did I talk about that yet? No, aspects of your life. So you expect it more in your government, you expect it more in your church, you expect it more in the other organizations you're in. And so we find that people in cooperatives tend to be more involved in civic participation, civic decisions, civic organizations. And tend to think more about economic strategy, not just sort of political strategy when they are involved in things. And then the final piece, 10, is economic and environmental sustainability. Cooperatives tend to focus more on stability, long life, ecological sustainability and protecting of the ecology, that kind of thing. We're actually seeing cooperatives that are green businesses. I work with a group called Green Worker Cooperatives in the Bronx, who actually have combined the notion of environmental sustainability with worker ownership, and they help to incubate, they train people, they have a co-op academy and do co-op business training, but for businesses that are going to be green businesses, recycling, organic food, bicycling instead of other kinds of transportation, things like that. And so they've created a whole co-op development program around green jobs. We've got green cleaning cooperatives. One is Emma's Eco Clean out of Oakland, California. They actually get trained in industrial cleaning with non-toxic materials, and then they hire themselves out to families who don't want those toxic cleaning materials in their home, and they use non-toxic cleaning materials in an otherwise regular cleaning facility, cleaning company. So again, that connection between caring about community, caring about the world around us, caring about sustainability in both those senses is very common and very important often in the cooperatives. So I think it's time for me to open it up to questions. I just want to sort of summarize a little bit. So the first thing I want to say is the important components that I found. The first one was most of the periods of time in at least African American history when co-ops were most prolific were the 1880s, the 1930s and 40s, and the 1960s and 70s. And the characteristics of those times were, one, strong Black organizations that promoted cooperative economics and did cooperative economic education. So in all those three periods, and in most of the cases, the places that had strong Black organizations doing this had the most cooperatives. Second, the places that had the most community support. So that's back to making sure you have a good dialogue with the community. They know what the co-op is, why it's there, what's happening, because the community support also then helps the co-ops to overcome some of the barriers of capitalization, the sabotage that I was talking about early on. The community helps to defend the co-op, and then the community is sometimes the client of the co-op, so that's very important. Having adequate resources and managing those resources properly, that's sort of education again, but also access to resources. Human energy and enthusiasm. I didn't really mention it before, but hopefully you saw that thread. It turns out, right, again, the most successful co-ops are the ones that have people who really put in the time and energy. It's not just having, quote unquote labor and capital, but this human energy and enthusiasm, ability to work with others. So either you can train people or the people that you already have who have that makes a big difference. Solidarity and trust, right? It's really hard to run these kind of co-ops if you don't have a sense of solidarity and trust, but again, those can be built if you pay attention to it, build it into an orientation and training, and keep watching, right, to make sure that people are bonding and trusting and connecting with each other and talking, right? Local control and intercooperation, so again, keeping it controlled by the community, cooperating with other groups and other co-ops that are doing this, reaching out and incorporating youth. Again, the co-ops that had a youth component and kept engaging youth were stronger than the ones that kind of just kept aging out. And the strong leadership role for women turned out to be all very important components. And finally, I found that the co-ops were transforming people's lives, as I said, not only creating leadership development, but also often changing, especially like the prison in Puerto Rico, where the inmates own their own co-ops. They really transformed their lives, their outlook on life, the way they connected with other people, what they saw as their future, and even for the outside co-ops, that same kind of sense of giving you that renewed sense of what can be accomplished happens through a co-op. So I'll leave you with a quote by W.E.B. Du Bois, again, one of African American's great scholars. He says, by consumers and producers' cooperation, we can establish a progressively self-supporting economy that will wield the majority of our people into an impregnable economic phalanx. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jessica. It was a very deep and insightful sharing of, I'm sure, many diamonds within your research. And thank you for dealing with our technical challenges. Certainly all of you, many of you have been to our BEDC seminars and our educational experiences before. And you know we like to get it right all the time. But, you know, certainly we flow, and that's what we've done tonight. We're open now for any questions, any comments, if you will. Gordon, coming to you. Yeah, so we're going to put a microphone in your hand. My audience members here. Gordon, perhaps you have something on your mind. And then we're going to exhaust this, and then Jessica's going to do a book signing. We have a few books at the back. We have probably about 15, 18 left. And so if you want one of Dr. Jessica's books, now is the time to move, and she'll be open for any book signing, and then we have a few presentations. Okay, so can we go back, Selena, to the slide previous with the youth up there? Yeah, yes, no, forward, no, back. Yeah, we've been following you for some part of it.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Around a little
Okay, so those of you who came to our last presentation, December 4th and 5th, we shared some very high-level cooperative opportunities, ideas that we thought could work. And one of the ideas was a youth co-op. Yeah, it has youth up there. If you can find it, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a youth co-op. And one of the ideas that we painted, fairly clearly, was that, wow, wouldn't it be great if we had a team, it's closer to the end, a team of youth that were focused to be able to bridge the space between fabulous assets like this, churches, lodges, clubs, Leopards Club, that have these halls, they have these meeting rooms, these convening spaces, but they perhaps lack the business and the whole kind of plug-in that entities like BEDC would need to be able to come to do first-class presentations and podcasts and webinars and whatnot. And that group could kind of work like that. And so the whole question to Jessica, Dr. Jessica, is what does it take sometimes to be able to work with asset decision makers, to be able to put forward new co-op, new business, because we're talking about just business first, a profitable business, co-op, yes, business ideas to be able to kind of make a start, pilot, beta test. How do we sometimes get through the door to be able to effect change, especially in Bermuda, which is pretty much a virgin kind of, ground up co-ops. We have no co-ops with the exception of the credit union. How do we start? What do we have? How does it happen?
So there's a couple of steps that I think are effective, and most of the first steps are all about education and promotion, right? For me, the very first thing is to remind ourselves, or whatever community it is, about how we do economic cooperation already. And you've got the friendly societies, those are one of the best examples, but you can even talk about, informal things, right? How we barter together, share, I'll take your kid to school and you'll make dinner, or you'll babysit on the weekend, and I'll do, right? So to think about reciprocity, what we already do, how we already share economic activities, economic things, especially to get back to the kind of legacies and histories we already have with the friendly societies and that kind of thing. So that to me is the first thing, just start talking about what we already do. Because to me, it's really important that people see this not as something alien, not as something even new, right? But a continuation of how we treat each other, how we act, and what has been successful in the past. The second thing is, if it's the people who have the capital, the money, or if it's the policymakers, we need to do targeted workshops and meetings with them to explain the model, to show them some of the successes, to show them why, right? I didn't actually go into all the whys, but some of the whys are that people actually work harder and work better when they're working together and not actually trying to compete with each other, you know, counter the mythology that we do better when we compete. It's actually true that, you know, the notion 2 heads are better than 1, right? It's actually how co-ops work, right? That people are actually putting their best ideas together and working it out together. So we need to remind people of how and why that works. If it's the money people, you also need to talk about how eventually this stuff is cost effective, right? In the sense of that pooling resources allows us to leverage what we have, even if it's relatively meager, and then use that to do something else. So, you know, like if you're trying to start a co-op and everybody puts in $10 or $100 or something, that gives you a pool of equity that then can be leveraged to get matching funds from somewhere else. So again, if it's about the money, then talk about how that pooling of resources makes sense and why and how it can work, and give examples of how it can work. And then I think we have to kind of inundate our whole community, sort of like what you're already doing with just programming, right? Listen, hear this, see this, learn about this, know about this, so that we feel comfortable with the model. And then, I forget if you were asking me how to get money out of people or how to get people to do the co-op.
Yeah, just
How
stop.
to get people to do it, right. So then, if you've got everybody inundated, feeling comfortable that the model can work, that's when you really have a targeted study group. You can start with having people talk about what's a problem that needs fixing, right, in the community that a cooperative business could address, right? Sometimes it's that the young people have nothing to do in the afternoons. Sometimes it's the lead poisoning, right? Sometimes it's we don't have enough organic, fresh food that we want to buy, right? So anyway, come together to figure out what the problem is, start to learn about the business that you want to use to solve the problem, and start to learn about how to be in a mutual society, meaning make decisions together, participate more, etc. So just the learning together goes a huge way. And then you need to make sure that your government has enabling laws, and then you need to find a group like you already have the BEDC that can then do official training to get you to the incorporation stage. Is that good enough?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was very thorough.
Okay, moving to the floor. Any questions? We've got microphones rolling around. Right. Yes, at the back.
Good evening. I see you're wearing one of my T-shirts. Us lifting us.
Yeah.
What is
From
your-
Atlanta.
Yes.
Us lifting us.
Yes. I'm a member owner of Us Lifting Us.
Oh, great.
And, I think of the term that said
Can you speak in the mic?
think locally and act globally. That's exactly what I did. Today we have over 500 members, owners of Us Lifting Us. They hail from South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa, Ghana, West Africa, Tokyo, Japan, UK, Canada, California, New York, Haiti, and of course, a few of us in Bermuda. We are currently owners of a very successful coffee house named Cafe Uyu. I named that Cafe Uyu. And we recently had our two-day convention, members meeting and convention a couple of weeks ago. So we are growing, in great numbers and everything. And whilst there isn't cooperative in Bermuda, there's no reason why you can't go where they exist. And so I encourage people to visit our website. It's www.usliftingus.com, and also Cafe Ulu is www.cafeulu.com. Are you a member owner?
You know, I'm not. I spoke at one of the conferences a couple of years ago, but I never actually had the time to join again.
Okay, well, you've been in existence since 2011.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a very exciting program.
Yes.
One of my colleagues actually did a report about the opening of the cafe in Atlanta.
This last date will be
Yeah.
here next month.
Right. So it's a great idea, and I'm hoping that all your branches will be able to start opening co-ops as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Any others? Yes.
Steve, I have a question on the legal structure for a co-op. What is involved in setting up a co-op?
I can tell you what is involved in the U.S. I don't actually know what the Bermuda law is, and actually I think I heard that you don't actually have one. So there's two things. The easiest structure is an LLC, which I assume you have here too, a limited liability corporation. And so especially for worker co-ops, a lot of them even in the U.S. use that. You could incorporate it as an LLC, and then you form your bylaws based on co-op principles. So in the bylaws, you could outline one person, one vote. Actually, I forgot to go over I had a slide about the difference between an investment stock corporation and a cooperative, but one of the biggest things is in an investment corporation, it's one share, one vote. So if you put in $100 and buy 100 shares, you get 100 votes, and the person who put in 5 shares only has 5 votes. In a co-op, it doesn't matter, right? So one of the pieces of the bylaws is to say that it's one person, one vote. It doesn't matter how many shares you own or how much money you invest in the co-op. You still have one vote as a member. And then there's a bunch of other kinds of relationships like that. You have to decide whether you want to be a co-op that is self-managing, manages by a committee or by rotating the leadership roles, or whether you want to do a traditional elect a board of directors from among the membership, right? So you have to make decisions about that kind of thing. If you have a co-op law in your state or your country, then that would spell out some of those things. Like some of the co-op laws say you can't have less than 3 members, you have to have a board elected by all the members, it depends on what those laws are. So, BEDC, I'm sure can help you with how it's done, or how you can do it in Bermuda. That's one of the things we just talked to the Premier about today, is that there needs to be federal enabling laws that can make it easy enough to do this. The other really important piece about incorporating a co-op is what happens, how can you dissolve the co-op, and what happens to the residual assets of the co-op. And co-op law in the United States, they make it really hard to dissolve the co-op, and the assets have to go to another co-op or nonprofit. And that's important because sometimes co-ops, if you make it too easy for them to sell out, once you get profitable, somebody comes in to raid you and make you dissolve your co-op, and so you want enough supports in there to make sure it's not so easy to dissolve the co-op or to be taken over. So those are, just off the top of my head, but and there's lawyers, like in the U.S., there's actually co-op lawyers who understand co-op law and understand all the state laws. In the U.S., our problem is all the states have different co-op laws, and we're trying to figure out how to get a federal law that would override all the state laws and be the same, so everyone would know whether, regardless of what state you're in.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions? For those people that are thinking, Dr. Jessica, about starting a co-op, we talk to some individuals, of course privately with their own individual businesses and business models, profitability, help my out, to kind of bring it up off the ground. What would you say to them? What does it take to, in regards to leadership, obviously membership, democratically owned, but what does it take at first for those individuals that are those champions, those early adopters, to get started? Mindset, effort, conflict management.
Yeah, I mean, just do it, right? Call a couple of your friends or the people who you know are interested or feel the same need, and get together, whether it's in your kitchen or at your church or whatever, and just start talking about it and researching it. Divide up the tasks for what you need to do, right? Go to the BEDC and find out if they have a co-op academy or a workshop that you can go to, start reading. There's tons of materials online. If you just put in how to start a co-op online, you'll come up with a million materials. One of my groups actually we tried to put together a one-stop website called www.ed.coop, like education.coop, ed.coop as a place to start, and we tried to get as many organizations that already had information about how to start a co-op and co-op research to be on our site so that you could go to our site and find all the places, all the information you needed to. We could farm them out to their site, so you can start by there, but really co-ops are about people getting together and doing things, right? So what you really have to do is get together with people. Even if you don't see yourself as a leader, you could at least talk to some other people or talk to your friend who's more charismatic than you, and the two of you do it together, right? Say, let's get together, don't you think we need such and such, let's get together and talk about it. And then, as I said, you start to study together, figure out what you need to know, divide up the work, talk to more people, I really don't know any other way to start except for that. I feel like a broken record sometimes. The other thing I think is really important is to get young people involved. I think we should all bring young people to the table or support young people who are trying to do this, because really it's not a long-term strategy if we don't have young people invested or interested and we're not bringing them along. So somehow figuring out how to get young people more involved. I think we also need a campaign to get co-ops taught in schools. You could even have credit unions in elementary school, middle school. You could start all different kinds of co-ops among young people while they're in school. If the schools would let you, that could be another way, again, to get the momentum going, get people thinking about it. I'm sure all of you have community issues that need an economic solution that you could think of that could lend itself to a co-op, or that a co-op could lend itself to, and you really just have to start doing it.
Absolutely. Mike, let's start just one thing, just while we're on that point. So on page 30 and 31, you'll see this 3-day in-depth workshop. Advocates. Pardon? Yeah.
Can I hear you?
I think they can. On pages 30 and 31,
Thank you. We have a 3-day in-depth workshop, May 20th to the 22nd, just before the holiday. Co-op ambassadors, champions, influencers, and certainly those of you who are desiring to be able to build your own businesses. We've got space for about a good 20 to 25 people looking at bringing down Najamku, and certainly Dr. Rebecca Savoy from the NCBA. So some first-class trainers, presenters, but a really solid grounding after, at the end of this in-depth workshop, to be able to build your cooperative knowledge. Yeah. Just please let us know.
Just one other thing I wanted to say. The other thing too is to think about converting an existing business, especially if you're about to retire and you own your own business. You could convert it, sell it to your employees, and they could have the co-op, especially if we don't have family members who want to inherit it, that kind of thing. Or if you have businesses that seem to be going under because they don't have anybody who wants to keep them going, that's another important thing to think about, is converting it to a co-op. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Dr. Nembhard, you made reference to a co-op that lasted for 20 years.
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened after 20 years, please?
Yes and no. So one of the shortcomings of my book is that it was very difficult to find full information about all the co-ops I mentioned. Most of the co-ops do not have their own histories written. And so what I found out about them was because they were in a newsletter, they were highlighted in a newspaper article, either because they started or they folded, or they were written by somebody else who wrote as much as they could. So let me see if I can remember what happened to that organization. And then some I don't know how they started or how they ended, or some I only know how they ended, or some I only know how they started, and some I only know what happened in the middle, right? So the Mercantile Association that lasted 20 years, if I remember correctly, I think what happened there was the reasons why they were in business kind of changed, right? If you remember that one, they were trying to provide grocery and supplies to black people who were not really either allowed to buy from the white store or who were getting inferior materials from the white store, and the white store wasn't hiring any black workers to work with the clients. In 20 years, I think that changed, right? As the co-op, as I said, helped to raise the level of quality of life and raise the level of education and economics for the black community. And times were starting to change. I mean, it wasn't the end of Jim Crow yet, but times were trying to change. So sometimes, and this is not the only co-op that this happened with, but sometimes the reasons the co-op started changed, often because of the co-op itself. The co-op kind of changes the world, and so then it's almost not needed anymore. So I think that's one of the things that happened with that co-op. There's another one that started in 1865 that lasted 18 years. It was a stevedore and caulker, black stevedore and caulkers cooperative. That one started because at the end of the Civil War, this was in Baltimore, Maryland, the state of Maryland passed a law after blacks were emancipated that said that black skilled workers could not work for themselves, because they didn't want the black skilled workers to compete with the white skilled workers. So they were saying that blacks had to work under a white manager or whatever. And so the blacks started their own company, this co-op, to hire the black stevedore and caulkers and have them run the company themselves. So that lasted 18 years. By the end of the 18 years, that company had actually integrated the workforce. They hired white and black stevedores and caulkers. They also therefore integrated the union, so black stevedores and caulkers could be part of the regular union. And so they really accomplished everything they needed to accomplish. The ground rent, the rent for the property went up astronomically, and so they couldn't afford that. So that was like the immediate precipitation for why they went under. But even when they went under, all their 200 employees got jobs because they were already in the union. They got jobs with the other shipyards. And so, as I said, pretty much all the things they had that were the problem for why they started were resolved in the 18 years because of what the co-op did. And so even though the co-op, I guess, probably would have wanted to stay longer, but couldn't afford the rent, they had accomplished everything they needed to accomplish. So a lot of the co-ops, that's what happened. They actually put themselves out of business because they solved the issue that they started out with. Now we can talk about if we want more longevity than 20 years, which is pretty good. Because remember, most small businesses go under in the first year and the first 5 years. So 20 years is actually really good for a small business. But if we want more longevity, then we need to also think about how co-ops can reinvent themselves, right? You need to think about re-engaging people, maybe even moving the business toward another thing. You need to talk about bringing in new people, because that's the other problem with some of the co-ops. You either don't bring in new people, or the new people aren't educated as much in the business and the reasons for the business as the original people. And so again, back to education. Longevity requires continuous education.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you for your talk. I really enjoyed it. You mentioned that there were kind of three main bursts of cooperative explosion.
In the US, yeah.
Post-Civil War Reconstruction, 1930s Depression, and the post-World War II boom. I was just wondering if since the 2008 Depression, have we seen an explosion in cooperatives in the US at the moment? I mean, we're seeing the rise of fascism and socialism, so I'm just curious.
Yes, actually, yes. I probably should add another period, 2008 to now. But I didn't really focus on that in the book, but I guess I should add it to my talks. Definitely since the Great Depression, the two areas that have seen the most growth have been worker co-ops and food co-ops. food co-op movement has grown mostly in white communities, but actually we just recently have started to have a surge in black food co-ops. And some of that is black communities deciding that they really need to address the food insecurity and food deserts issue, and realizing that a co-op model can help to do that. And so educating themselves about it and trying to figure out how a co-op store can solve that problem. The worker co-op movement has really been taken to storm by immigrant women who are using the worker co-op strategy to actually find real meaningful work and non-exploitative work. It doesn't mean that those are the only kinds of worker co-ops that are starting, but that's the predominant kind are immigrant women co-ops, very small. But that's definitely, we're seeing a rise in that. And what's happening with that rise is a rise in municipal support, especially for worker co-ops. And so we're finding there's about 10 to 12 US cities that are now actually investing money, city money, into doing co-op education and co-op loan funds to make sure that their cities have an option for worker co-op development as a way to reduce unemployment in their cities and reduce poverty. And so that combination of cities putting actual money into it and groups demanding that they need to do a different strategy and that the other old strategies have really not worked. It was more obvious under the Great Recession that some of the regular strategies for getting work and getting out of poverty just weren't accessible and weren't working for people. And so I think that's helped with perpetuating this latest movement. So I'm hoping that it continues. The only other piece of that is there have been some declining co-op sectors in the US, like the ag sector has really declined. And it was pretty much dominated by large agricultural co-ops now, and that's pretty much all there is. There's a little bit, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives in the South is promoting black-owned ag co-ops, and so there's a little bit of growth and movement there, but pretty much the mainstream agricultural movement is declining, but there is a rise in these urban co-op, more urban co-ops.
Thank you. John and Gordon.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I just want to say, for the last couple of months, I've been involved in discussing the human rights that do or don't happen in here in Bermuda. And one of the issues we realize is that the white families, the white community, keeps making money, economic strength. And the black community doesn't keep making money. They don't have that strength. One of the issues that I see as resolving some of the problems, which I've spoken to some of the people who have leadership roles in Bermuda, is creating indoor farms, for example. One I had suggested to a politician, we could do directly across from a primary school. And if we did it across from that primary school, we could teach the children at the ages of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Teach them, first of all, how to function in a farm, how to grow their own food, and hopefully they would take that idea back home to their parents and say, look, Mom, Dad, we got 5 feet here, let's grow some food for ourselves. That was one of the ways that I believe we could help us to sustain or create opportunities for ourselves as a black community. The other situation is that when you look at what's going on in Bermuda, we don't have any control of any of the economic strength here. We have none. The airport is owned by Canada. The Balco, they're trying to sell to Canada. And if you look around, everything is going out, it's being outsourced. And the challenge is, as we get poor, other countries get richer. So we're undermining ourselves. And the idea of having co-ops makes so much sense. But we year by year, not just myself, I'm sure others have talked about it. But I realize here, it's two the same. saying is what matters, not what they're saying. Because if we listen to ourselves and start importing some of these strategies that make sense, we will become a stronger little island. But we're not prepared to do it unless it's Mr. So-and-so, or Sir so-and-so, or this person over here, you know, and if it's this little person from back of town, I don't want to hear about him. But it's not about me. It's about what can we do to strengthen our society? What can we do to make our children's lives better? Because as you all recognize, the world's heading into a robotic situation. The work, as she said, is not going to be much work on here because robots will be doing it. So what are we going to do to feed ourselves?
Can we get you right there? What are we going to do to feed ourselves? Thank you, John. Yeah.
Well, as I said, we're dealing with that, you know, food deserts and things like that in the U.S. too. I really think that the school gardens, right, is a huge, actually, urban gardening movement and a black urban gardening movement happening in the U.S., right? So getting a hold of that, figuring out, right, so I think the school gardens is a good way to get the kids involved and then get them to, you know, also do one at home. Urban gardens, right, I don't know, I guess you guys aren't exactly urban. You're sort of a mixture of urban rural, right, but doing more home plots and more community gardens, right, so again, people are learning it, sharing it and learning it, having more farmers markets. That's, you know, I think you're right, you have to start with the young people and start teaching them how to do it, and they'll bring their families along. You know, we usually say that about everything, right? If you have young people do it, the parents always usually come, even if it's reluctantly, they come to support their kids. So I think that's a great way to do it. I think also, you know, partly I got into this research and into this co-op movement because I was also trying to figure out for the U.S. how more African Americans could take more control over their economics. That's why I left you with that quote from Du Bois, who really believed that if we used what he called a group economy mentality and used cooperative economics to make sure that we were solving our own economic problems for ourselves, that we could actually use that as a stepping stone, right, to gain economic stability, then economic wealth, then position in society to a place where we could be heard. And if we wanted to integrate the rest of society, we could integrate from a position of strength and equality rather than, you know, begging for things and trying and coming in from a position of inequality. He has another quote we talked about, you know, stop being the beggars and the mules of society, right? That using cooperation, we could really become equal partners in a new city. He also saw in his day, he was worried about industrialization, taking our jobs. Now we have to worry about robotics. But again, he and others felt that using cooperative economic development, right, creating cooperative businesses that address problems, right? We can have co-ops that control of the robotics, right? I mean, we don't have to see any of these, what do you call it, any of these progressions as being out of our control if we see ourselves as being the ones to take control of our economic activity. So whatever it is, right, we don't have to necessarily slow down the robotic movement, but we do have to take control, take charge of it, or create companies that we control that would use the robotics, and then use the robotics in the best way, right? Originally, industrialization and robotics was supposed to give us more free time, right? It was supposed to do things more efficiently and give us more free time to actually live life. But what happened is because capitalists used it to stop us from working and taking our livelihood away from us, right? But that's because we don't control it. So my argument is we need to think about and use co-ops as a way to control these things so that we can use it in the best way that meets our needs and our community's needs.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation and to BEDC for putting this on. My question, I have two questions actually. The first is really, if you could talk a little bit more about participatory leadership, because I think there is such a important concept there that for many people it's alien to how we were taught in the private sector, winner take all, keep your cards close to your chest. It's a need to know. It's not a transparent, it's a black box world. And I think that participatory leadership and the concept of rotating leadership really fractures that in a very healthy way of really talking about from me to we. So if you could talk about that. The second one is really, have you seen cooperatives move into the philanthropic sector that I think traditionally is about serving others, but their business model is a private sector membership model, usually driven by a small board of directors that either do it for or do it to a community. I think sometimes we're missing doing it with the community.
Okay. Yes. So, democratic participation. Trying to think of what else I could say from what I've already said. So I think that the pieces about it are, one, we have to be retaught how to work together, right? I actually, I have a rant, I guess it is, a rant and rave that I do sometimes about kindergarten. And I don't know, this is Bermuda, not the United States, so maybe it's probably the same. But anyway, my rant about it is that I actually think we beat cooperation out of kids in kindergarten. And that if you think about what it means to be promoted from kindergarten to first grade, you guys have the British system, so it's not even kindergarten. I used to teach in the British system. I can't remember what you call it, before before standard one. But anyway, preschool? Right. Anyway, in those early grades, right, basically what we're teaching kids is how to not be cooperative, right? Yes, we want them to cooperate when they play or whatever, but we don't want them to cooperate in terms of the things that really matter, right? In fact, we teach them it's cheating, right? If you turn to your classmate and ask them a question, especially during a test, right, and try to collaborate with them, that's actually cheating. You get expelled, you get an F, first of all, you can get thrown out of school, you get expelled or whatever, right? If you have an idea that's different from the teacher's, right, that's wrong, right? You're supposed to regurgitate what the teacher tells you. You're supposed to analyze things the way the teacher tells you, even math, right? If you don't do long division the way the teacher tells you, they assume you don't know math, but there's so many kids who know how to do the math in some other way that you can't even fathom, but we tell them that's wrong. Right? So the first thing is, right, we do have to figure out how are we training young people, right? Because I believe that we all actually start out being very collaborative and collective, and we want each other's opinions, we want to work together, right? But as I said, it's kind of beaten out of us. The second thing is, it is true that sometimes it's hard to have a clash of ideas to figure out what to do when people don't agree with you, right? But right now, again, we live in societies where that's considered a horrible thing, right? That's considered conflict and a mess, right? And most of us are conflict averse. We don't want the mess. But what if we thought of conflict as what it's really supposed to be in dialectics, right? You can't make it to a new idea without a conflict or clash between two other ideas. So what if we saw conflict as part of a transformative thing? We taught people how to work through it and with it, right? How do you get to the next good idea by people talking things out and disagreeing with each other, right? So teaching that has got to be important, right? Because we won't get further. We won't get into that leadership, kind of cooperative leadership, if we don't learn those, right? Those key, turn some of the stuff on the head of what we're already learning. And then I think the other thing is we have to make it fun, and people don't always talk about this either, but I try to remind us, right? Most of the time, we do or want to do stuff that feels good, right? So any of this stuff, running a business, learning about how to run a business, conflict resolution, right? There's got to be some joy or some fun in it, right? Most of the time, it is funner to do something with other people than it is to do it by yourself. But we take the fun out of it because we make it seem like it's got to be a clash and somebody's got to be the leader and somebody's idea always has to win. But if we make it more about how we all do it together and how we come to a better decision together and have some fun doing it, then I think that makes a difference too. So trying to figure out how we do all this teaching and working together, but make it fun, even though obviously it's consequential, right? We're putting money into it and whatever, but it's still gotta be, right? So the fun aspect of it. And then I think back to that, I was trying to tell you about that notion that people take leadership in different ways and under different circumstances. That's the other piece. We need to see ourselves as all leaders, even if we have different personalities, different leadership styles, right? So that I can be a leader, you know, maybe I'm good at, I don't even know, I'm good at math, right? Obviously I'm an economist. So maybe I can be a leader at first on some of the financial stuff, right? But then that also means I have a responsibility to start teaching other people to be as comfortable with numbers as I am. But meanwhile, my friend is the outgoing one, right? I'm actually shy and introverted. So they do more of the marketing or whatever, but then they're going to be teaching me some of the marketing, right? So that I learn some of those skills. So anyway, you know, you step up and step back. You do leadership in the things that you're either better, feel more comfortable with or more capable of, but then you figure out how to step back when you can. How to give people leadership in another aspect. How you start training and bringing people along. That's the other thing. We're always taught about how, right, it's just us, and if we don't do it, right? But that's where, again, we need to learn about how it's stronger, right? We're stronger when we're together, when we're interwoven, right? And so thinking about how we train people to really think about how to make us stronger as a group rather than letting one or two people shine, and how to recognize invisible strengths, right, that people have, because everybody has strengths. It's just that it's easier for us to look at the traditional leadership things and give those people the confidence and the success, and the other people that don't have the traditional leadership styles, we kind of ignore them. And so again, developing all those different styles. So that's some ideas about that. And then your other question, the only way I can really answer that is I'm also part of a movement in the US to do non-extractive lending for cooperative development. And what we have is technically nonprofits who are community development institutions, financial institutions, or aspiring to be community development financial institutions, but who are good at attracting philanthropic money to do co-op development. But then in the lending, we're doing non-extractive, which means that we lend out and you only give us back what we lend you if your co-op makes it, if it's profitable. If your co-op goes under, it was actually a grant and you don't have to pay it back. If your co-op is successful, you pay it back, and then with not exactly with interest, but with some administrative costs paid back so that we can keep running the loan fund. And so it's kind of like pulling money, having an organization that can pull in outside money well, and then distributing it to groups that want to be co-ops. But the other piece of it is the co-op model itself. So that nonprofit actually becomes a co-op by having all of the members who are getting loans have a representation on the board of that nonprofit. So then all the people you're lending to are also on the nonprofit and helping to decide what the next policies are, who to lend to next, that kind of thing. And the point there again is to not have the finance be the thing that's, that could potentially destroy the burgeoning company, right? That it's hard enough to attract capital to have capitalization, right, to sort of take that onus off. So you do the best you can with the money, and obviously the loan fund follows you, right? It gives technical assistance, it follows you to make sure that you're doing the best you can to be a successful business so you can pay the money back, because we want the money back to let it out to somebody else. So we don't want you to fail, so we do the best we can. I don't know if that sort of answers your question about a philanthropic model, but that's the one I know about, and we're trying to get it to work in the US. So far it's working on a very small scale, but we're trying to up it.
Thank you so much. We're going to talk more about that.
Everybody here has an interest in this subject on some level. die if it dies quickly if nobody does anything about it. My question is, and it's probably not so much to you, it's probably to everybody here, and maybe also to the BEDC. If there are people here who are interested in this, they need to take the next step. My question is, what does the next step look like here in Bermuda? That's my question.
Okay. Does someone want to bounce that around? Yes, sir.
Yes, thanks. We've been working on an initiative recently whereby we've been trying to get different groups together to, I think, thank you, ma'am. I think she's covered most of the bases that we need to know about. That of group pool of resources. That's the major thing there. It's about talking to people you know, that you have a close relationship with, and just say, hey, let's start pooling some resources. Put them together and try and leverage that as much as you can. That's the next step. We're talking about financial resources. Sorry. We're not only talking about financial resources, we're talking about pooling of skill sets. There may be accountants in your group. There may be some people who are very skilled at accounting. There may be some who are skilled at legal work. I think those are the first two pillars, the accounting part and the legal structure. Those are the first two things you need to put into place to run any successful organization. Skill sets, and the other thing is material resources. So there are three parts to that. Material resources. Things like, you may have just completed a construction project. You have 2 or 3 lengths of road in your backyard, and sitting there for 2 years. You may bring that to a central location where someone else can make use of it. Same with pipe or building materials, those sorts of things. So that's where you start. You start talking to your immediate group, find out what skill sets you have, find out what financial resources you have, and materials. Put them all together and just move forward.
What is the touchstone for this? What is the touchstone for this?
Touchstone is
Point of contact.
well, we're a point of contact. We like to think we're a point of contact. Clubs, you said, she mentioned it. Clubs, your church, maybe a member of a church. You look around, you group together some of the church members. She's covered the whole gamut as far as soliciting support for your fellow club members in your club, your football club, your church, and those sorts of things. Neighbors, friends, you bring them together, you start a dialogue, you start to move forward.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that. I'm not going to volunteer to BEDC, but we also clearly started the conversation, but possibly run as a centralized place. Sorry, the BEDC, I was just going to say, I started a conversation about this, and you might know some accountants and you might know some lawyers, but if there's sort of a central, conversation place where possibly the BEDC is aware of some of it or not, and they could help leverage their resources to help bring new people into the conversation to make a broader pool of the community.
Isn't that the purpose of your 3-day seminar? Isn't that the purpose of your 3-day seminar? I don't.
She said, isn't that the purpose of your 3-day seminar, the BEDC seminar?
Yes, that's part of it. He's able to come back. Thank you, Kate. Are you finished with that? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, as far as touchstones, how do we start? What's next? All great questions, but a few things. I mean, we've got upcoming seminars and workshops that we've identified. Thank you for sharing about our 3-day workshop, our immersive. We're working with a few of you with your individual business ideas. I'm certainly not going to put you on the spot. So we've got various entrepreneurial, because absolutely, it's a profitable business for us. We can get started on the business model. We can talk about leadership. We can talk about convening. We can talk about funding, bootstrapping. We have a whole financing workshop coming on the pipeline that's in the public. Do attend that. It's about continuing to come up. Monterey took 13 years to develop their first co-op. Hopefully it won't take us that long here and whatnot, but I think we're sowing the ground, we're seeding, we're spreading diamonds, and that's a good part, a very important part of the bottom of the pyramid. Yes, is that right, Doctor?
Yes. So people doing for themselves, and then as I said, the most prolific times have an organization dedicated to helping do this, and you have an organization dedicated to helping do this. So you already have most of the ingredients, right? So now it's a matter of coming together, figuring out different ways to come together, and then using the resource that you have. But it really, as I said, it can start in somebody's kitchen, 2 or 3 of you to start talking. But it sounds like you already have more in place than that. So you already have places to go, workshops to go to, ideas already fomenting. So keep those moving and keep new ideas coming. I think that's the other thing, just keep talking to each other and keep it alive.
Yeah. Okay. Mr.
Good evening all. My name is Kyle Bridgewater. Thank you, BEDC, for this presentation. Thank you, Dr. Jessica, for coming to excite us and give us some passion. And to that question about what's next, I am standing to represent the Loyal Flower of the Day Lodge, which is a friendly society here in Bermuda. We need membership. We need you. So I have an application form. And if you want to fill it out, then we can begin that list. But I'm sure this is only one scope on that wheel of cooperatives and ways that we can work together. So I would encourage everyone here who does know of these entities and where they are. I'm from the Loyal Flower of the Day, and that's what I'm putting in. So some people might say Samaritans, some people might say other Odd Fellows, but Stanford Hart represents the U.S. American, the American version of Odd Fellows. I come from a UK version of Odd Fellows. So there are a number of lodges here. We've been doing work in the community for over 100 years, and we lack membership. We have all of the rights and obligations that you would like to see us utilize and develop. Thank you, BEDC, for coming here and doing the things that we are no longer doing for ourselves. That is why they're here. They're here because we are not moving fast enough. So I would try to encourage any passion here and anyone to say, I want to do more than do it. That's what I believe the doctor is saying. Just do it. So I thank you for a few words, and I don't think it's hard to find me. And feel free to come on out. I have an application for you. We have a male lodge, we have a female lodge.
The lodge just down on the main street from St. George's Club. I always forget the former. Summers Pride of India. Thank you, Kyle. And as you all know, it's boarded out. It's been like that for some time. And a significant property. I mean, kind of structure-wise, land around it. So we'd be happy to be able to meet with any of you that have any ideas, a focus, a vision for what that could become. Perhaps it's a call for 2 or 3 that reside out of there. But I think for one, the executive or whoever the stewards are of that significant asset would love to be able to hear all sorts of interesting opportunities to be able to renovate, develop that particular facility, to open its doors to do a community service type of work that's beneficial to us as a community, perhaps even our young people. So we have assets around all over the island like that, and we're here to be able to help you, to listen, to be able to brainstorm the vision. If we don't have the answers, we can ask whoever in the community to come in the room to be able to help. That's the work that we do. Question? Yes, right here.
Right now I'm trying to figure out, can we cooperatives come
I'm sorry. On social cooperatives. I'm sorry, can you just speak loud? Speak up, yeah. Mike,
Okay, I was wondering if there is such thing as a social cooperative, not dealing with economics and jobs and agriculture and all that, but dealing with the quality of our society through reaching our children. We're coming together, and a lot of us who are having retired, going into the schools and working with the teachers, with the students, to try to get them back on the right way, so to speak. Is there such a thing as a social cooperative?
Yes.
Some churches do all and adopt, they really have adopted a school. But
Yes.
it's not where a lot of us are there every day helping the teachers to deal with the children, because they really are a different generation from us, and teachers really do need help. So I was wondering if that type of thing existed.
Yes, I understand exactly. Did you hear him? Okay, let me try and rephrase. Yeah. Okay. So your vision, I sense a little bit of passion here around: is there a social cooperative, being the idea of seniors, elders, going into the school system to be able to help our young people, to be able to assist and empower alongside our teachers. So cooperatives are businesses, they're for-profit businesses, so perhaps some sort of sister, some different branch on the tree, where you still have that kind of democratic, that collective of wisdom and knowledge to be able to assist our young people.
Right, yeah. So if you're saying it doesn't have to be an actual enterprise or business to make money, but just to, right, pool the knowledge and energies of the elderly and have them work with the young people, yes. I got a little bit thrown because there's an official term of a social cooperative that comes out of Italy, which is still a business, but it's owned by social service people and has the double mission of the social mission, and it's still a company. So, sorry, that's why I got confused. But yes, that is why I was also talking about, just think about cooperation in general, right? There's lots of ways that we can just work together, barter our services, come together. I think that kind of using the elderly to work with young people in schools and to support the teachers sounds like a fabulous project. Again, I could see that coming out of one of the Friends Societies, one of the church group, or it could be just a group of elderly who say this is what they want to do and then present themselves to a school or start doing it, with their grandchildren's school or something like that. Again, for me, most of the time is there's no bad ideas, right? It's just poorly executed ideas. So the thing is, get an idea, get a group of people and do it. And right, I'm not that worried whether it makes money or is a money-making business, as long as it's something that's going to help address an issue and then it's done with people in a collective way. To me, that matters the most. But if you had people who needed to earn money doing that, there's probably a way that you could actually have a co-op of elderly tutors or whatever, and they could actually probably make it into a money-making thing as well if that was needed. So I hope that kind of answers your question, but
Well, I think that that's an excellent thing too. I thought about the last 10 years during the downturn of the economy, and although it was painful for a lot of people, I did encourage some when we did January to when they're giving land state banking. In other words, a lot of the fathers and the mothers who were not working, and they couldn't get a job, but they're all trying, but there's always, I'm maybe from traumatic experience about mental. But it is still a great opportunity there. If you lay enough and you got a job, and you don't have a job, and you can't just sit down and do nothing but us, wondering how many of our parents of those who were unemployed use that opportunity to even spend a lot more time with their children at school or in the home, or if they just go out and be upset and sit on the rocks or go to the ball strengthen the family ties. And I don't know if that happened, but I'm encouraging people that they make people who are in that position of being unemployed, at least listen to, go to their children's schools and spend more time with their children at the schools and spend more time at home with the children instead of going out and feeling depressed and, losing the opportunity to make their family a stronger family.
Right. Actually, there's a lot of things that can come out of that, right? You learn new skills, right? That kind of volunteering, you create more relationships, intergenerational relationships that then can help the students gain other skills and do other things. Elderly people could also help the students create co-ops and stuff, because you learn a lot about how to market, about math, etc., by being in a co-op. And so that's another way to connect those things.
I want to say this, man. Wow, I can leave for all what he's talking about. Is that a lot of the young retired people who just retired out of early retirement or just retired in the last couple of years seem to be struggling. And I think one of the ways we can, as a co-op, create a situation like in Japan and China, they take those folks at their age, and what they do is they put them in place or in charge of an indoor farm. And that way you help them and they help themselves. So if we can take young people who have retired early or late or whatever, then we can help them to cut down on their overhead budget in terms of food, and at the same time we create ways to sell product, because everything from here is imported. But if we grow our own vegetables, that cuts down on the overhead and also. That's all it is.
Right. Yep. That's the idea.
Thank you. Eureka?
Yep. Let's give a round of applause. Okay, so in the closing, first and foremost, I want to thank Maxine Asdale, Dr. Michael Bradshaw for being here and giving the opening and setting the context for the evening. I want to thank Dr. Gordon-Nembhard for giving your time and sharing. I think it's very important. I saw some aha moments, some flashlights, some light bulbs go off in people's heads. BEDC is really committed to changing the landscape, right? To help people to believe that instead of being employed, they can be self-employed. You can create your own economic empowerment. And so one way to do that is to create a cooperative to do that. And so we are really committed to educating our population about cooperatives as viable business models that actually have a shared social cohesion principle. I want to say thank you to William for being the lead on cooperatives in Bermuda. If you have any questions, please, by all means, feel free to meet with William, reach out to him, and come into our office. I want to thank our team for helping to put on this wonderful event tonight. And as our catalog says, we will have more. So really, we are committed about educating our populace and really giving you the tools to be successful in whatever you want to do. I want to close by just saying that Bermuda is built on a history of collective and cooperative actions, right? As Dr. Gordon-Nembhard said, you might not have been aware, you didn't refer to it that, but our history is built on us working together as a people. We have some wonderful examples of our friendly societies and lodges, right, who have built assets, who have created things collectively and cooperatively, right? Last night I was saying they need to tell us how they did it so that we can replicate that model. We have sports clubs who have built their legacy is built on cooperation and collective will, right? Not from an individual person, but from people who came together and said, this is our principles collectively, this is what we want to see, and we're going to build it. We have schools
that have been built collectively. I mean, the Barclay Institute is a prime example of this. Institutions such as the Sunshine League, another example of collective will, people coming together to create institutions to serve a need. And so in all of this history, what I want to leave you with is to act courageously, as Dr. Nembhard has said in her book, right? It is about collective courage, right? Let's be courageous. Let's step out to really have the will to work together to build wealth, to build economic success within our society. So I leave today and say, please everyone, make a decision to take action. Thank you for coming and have a wonderful evening. Usually Dr. Gordon-Nembhard did just to show you some appreciation for her time and her wisdom. As we said, she has some books. She will be more than willing to sign them at the back. If you haven't given your name, please do so. And feel free to even take a moment before you leave to network with someone else that you haven't met tonight to just see if there's an opportunity for collective build. So thank you, Dr. Gordon-Nembhard. I think we want to take a picture.
The rest of the team involved.
Yes.
Yes,
the rest of BEDC's team, if you could come
Maxine,
forward. And also the
Michael,
other speakers.
if you're here. Michael Bradshaw. Maxine. Yeah.